Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is a spoiler alert. It's by a two-man developer called Megafuzz, and it promises to be the first game that you will ever uncomplete. Which is, of course, a lie, because Retrograde did that. I would imagine that there's probably been a couple of others, most likely Flash games, which is actually really what this game reminds me of. It does remind me of the kind of thing that you would find on Congregate or Newgrounds, and let's be honest, that's where a lot of really great developers like Behemoth got their start, and it's awesome that they were able to do that. But along comes Spoiler Alert, which is a game that you play in reverse. It is a platformer. You start at the end, you go right back to the beginning of the game. Let's have a look at the options menu. There isn't one. That's it. Come on! Really? There's not a single thing here that I can slide. I've got to simulate the sliding. And it's not very satisfying, I'll tell you that for a fact. Here, give him a poke. Pretty much nothing there. Outside of full screen and not full screen. Yeah. It is a 2D game. As usual, we give the benefit of the doubt to 2D games because you don't really need a huge amount there, but separate audio sliders at least. The ability to rebind keys, that would be nice. No. That's not here. So, what has it got? It's got level editor, and it has 3 worlds, plus a 4th bonus world, and a speedrunning mode. You see these times? They're pretty accurate. I beat this game in under 40 minutes. The whole lot. Whole thing. Which was kind of shocking, frankly. So, let's start from the beginning, just to demonstrate how exactly this thing works, shall we? Okay, so, it starts off by going along like this, as you might imagine. It's just nice and normal, nothing unusual there. And then you reach the final boss, which dies instantly. You go to the end of the game, you rescue the princess, and then you start going backwards. Now, for some reason, you are a chili. I have no explanation for that whatsoever. And there we go. And then it runs the credits. Yeah, it's kind of cute. We get it. And, yeah, rewind, go backwards. And the point of the game is to retrace your steps, avoid time paradoxes, which means don't kill things that you didn't kill in the first place, don't collect coins that you didn't collect in the first place, etc., etc. And then beat the game. Now, the levels are incredibly short. There are about 100 of them, but like I said, I did beat it in about 40 minutes. It didn't take much doing at all. So you can see I'm uncollecting the coins here. I'll jump to unkill the enemy, and that's the end of one level. It was done incredibly fast, 12 seconds. Next level, we avoid these coins because they are not faded out, which means that they weren't collected in the first run. That would create a time paradox, which means, and I'll show you exactly what that does, that will just restart the whole level. Levels do not, in fact, have checkpoints in them, but their levels aren't very long either. You know, most of the levels can be beaten in about 20 seconds or less. So you really won't find yourself restarting too much, which is good, because frankly, the game throws an awful lot of stuff at you that you don't necessarily see coming, and involves a decent amount of trial and error, particularly when it comes to some of the platforming. Now, you might notice that I'm running at a fairly consistent speed. Yeah, that's because there is no actual run button. You can't change your direction. Well, that's not true. There is one level where you can change your direction, but only one. Like, it's a mechanic they put in. I thought, oh, okay, so now it's starting to get somewhere. And then they never use the mechanic again, which is really strange, actually. That kind of blew my mind. It was unexpected. It may be in the bonus world, which is 10 super hard levels. That is possible, but I didn't see the mechanic outside of that. Now, you can also sometimes collect so-called power-ups, and all this really means is you're going to get an additional little mechanic that you have to take part in order to pass the level. So, in this case, I catch the fireballs that are being thrown at me. There we go. In this case, I'll jump up and catch the fireball, which for some reason didn't work. We'll give it another shot, shall we? And that didn't work either. That's weird. Now, I'm supposed to be hitting the Z. There we go, in order to make that happen. I just generally hammer the button multiple times, because one of the weird things that I've found with this game is that the controls seem to be fairly unresponsive. So, more often than not, I have to hit the jump button a couple of times to make sure that it actually jumps or whatever. And this is it. I mean, this is the entire game, and I beat it in about 40 minutes, and as you're well aware, I am really bad at platformers. Now, of course, I didn't do it perfectly, as you can see. I got plenty of gold medals, but also some silver and some bronze, and if we go back to World 1, you'll notice a bit more silver, a bit more bronze, but still some gold here from time to time. You start with a boss fight, which is a little bit weird, honestly. I mean, obviously the first boss fight doesn't involve anything. The second boss fight is fairly simplistic. You just jump on the squid a couple of times. It takes very little effort, simply because you're not going to be moving your character around all that much, since he just bounces back and forward across the screen. And that's kind of it. So I think the principle, or at least, I suppose the gimmick behind this game is a nice idea. But the actual game itself is just flagrantly lacking in complexity in every way. And I understand making a simple game, don't get me wrong, but this game is far too simple and frankly a waste of the potential of the idea behind it. As I mentioned earlier, when I saw that one level with the signs that would bounce you in the other direction, I thought, ooh, potential here. I have some ideas about how this could end up going. But actually, the game doesn't use any of that. It really doesn't. You end up just going through some very basic and short levels, occasionally avoiding spikes, jumping on mushrooms to bounce, and you've got to make sure you do that at the right time, otherwise you'll die and have to restart the level. There's a couple of enemies that take a little bit more to kill. For instance, there's one that you'll kill and then it will kind of fire this sort of plasma bolt at you, and it'll come out from the side of the screen, because obviously everything's going backwards, and then that'll kill you if it touches you, and so on and so forth. There's some of the penguins, which, if you kill, they actually end up turning into these, and you've got to jump on them again the second time. But the so-called enemy variety that this game apparently has, at least according to the Steam description, is lacking in extreme. I mean, there's actually not that many enemy types at all, and the game is fairly unforgiving, but it's also actually very easy. And really, the only trouble you're going to have is trying to gold every level or doing the speedrunning and time trial sort of mode. And frankly, I have no interest in really doing that. There is a lot of trial and error involved in it, especially in the later levels where things will just come flying in from off the screen, and since you can't actually stop or slow down your character in any way, if you don't know it's coming, chances are you're going to die to it, and it can be a little bit cheap, to say the least. Some of the levels get a little bit fiddly like this one. You've just got to jump at exactly the right time in order not to screw it up, which more often than not, again, involves trial and error. Now, the character itself is a little large, in my opinion. That's not just an aesthetic complaint. It really comes down to the hitbox, the actual accuracy of the character when it comes to not touching a spike or not touching an enemy isn't really there, and it seems like the hitboxes are a little bit larger than they should be, so you get some dodgy hit detection, which means that you'll have to restart a level multiple times really for no reason, which is a bit unfortunate. Those are minor things, of course, that can be fixed, but ultimately, I think the game just has very little substance to it. And that's unfortunate, because the concept is quite nice, but they did nothing with it. There are, I think, 3 total power-ups in the entire game, 2 of which do almost the same thing, that being the dragon head with the fireballs, and then there's another head with hammers, which is basically the same. You just press Z to catch them. And then there's one more which lets you roll. And again, those power-ups last for about 2 minutes. You go through a few levels, then you lose them. So you go back to the usual, which is being on auto-run and then hitting the jump button. And that really is about it. Now you might think, oh, well, custom levels will fix things. Well, there aren't any yet. Yeah? No one is making these things. Can I have a quick look at the level builder? Like a large level. Okay, so I see him kind of going backwards here. It seems to be relatively simplistic. It doesn't seem to be particularly difficult to execute. Oh, how on earth you... Oh, that alt-tabbed the game. Okay. Okay, so if I wanted to go back, what exactly would I do here? Alright. Actually, a surprising lack of tile sets available here, from what I can tell. So those are decorations. These, I assume, are enemies. As you can see, there's really not all that many of them. That's really about it. So if we'd put one there, put one there. I don't actually know how to move along any further. So, I mean, is this the largest level you can make? I mean, that would be absolutely absurd, wouldn't it? No, it can't be. That would be absolutely ridiculous if that were the largest level you could actually make. I'm not seeing exactly how to move along there. You see those? Oh, is that it? Okay. All right. So that, I think, is the largest level you can make. You just sort of roll out there. It's not very big, is it? Actually, kind of surprising Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's really a huge amount of room for creativity here. I suppose you could do some pretty clever stuff with these signs. As I said, they've only been featured in one level. Which is weird, because frankly, you would really expect them to actually come up with... There we go. You would really expect them to come up with some interesting levels to really show off what the game could do, but they kind of didn't. And they seem to have left it in the hands of the players. And you know what? I'm not really okay with that, I'm afraid. This game had a lot of potential, but it seems to have squandered it simply by being completely uncreative. Very disappointing, honestly. Very disappointing. And head over to the bonus content, you'll see there's the speedrunner mode, and this is Mariachi World, which is 10 fairly difficult levels with some rather annoying enemy pathing, to say the least. Which involve precise timing, which is mostly trial and error, as you've, again, probably noticed, which is kind of frustrating. There we go. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's very hard to justify spending money on a game like this. There's so little to it. As someone that doesn't really speedrun anything, if I'd paid money for this, I would have been extremely disappointed with the length of it. I have no real desire to go and replay the levels for gold or anything like that. And you know what I find really strange about it? And I suppose it makes sense from a mechanical standpoint, but it's extremely silly in terms of the thematic elements of the game. It's the idea that the game actually gets harder the further on you get into it. And you might be thinking, well, of course, that's how a normal game would be. Yeah, but you're supposed to be playing it backwards, so shouldn't it get easier? You think maybe they could have done something really clever with that. Maybe they could have introduced some mechanics later on. They could have made the level design simpler, yet simultaneously made the game harder. That's what they could have done. This game is just so much kind of wasted potential on an idea that really doesn't end up materializing into anything worthwhile, which is a real shame. Yeah, it's not really worthy of your time, I'm afraid. You know, maybe you'll be able to pick it up on sale at some point for next to nothing, maybe a couple of dollars. It's worthy of an hour of your time, perhaps. The ending's kind of cute, but there's not much of a platformer here. The controls aren't particularly tight. It runs at 45 frames per second for no apparent reason, and it's noticeable, really. It's like, wow, this frame rate's a little bit weird. It feels like there's a little bit of latency going on there. And it just doesn't really have any redeeming features in terms of its mechanics or in terms of any kind of clever level design. It doesn't really do anything. And as soon as the game kind of sort of gets going, it, well, ends. That's like, that was it? Really? Did I really just beat this game in about 40 minutes? Yes, I did. So that's not really worthy of $8, I'm afraid. It's fairly rare that you find a situation where a game is a worse value proposition than a movie ticket, but in this case, it most certainly is. So, sorry, spoiler alert is, in my opinion, not really worth the time, and hey, at least I can say that it's one of the few games this year that I got around to beating, because it was so incredibly short that I went to do a first impressions and then accidentally beat the game. But there you go. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. It's available on Steam for $8 or your regional equivalent. And I'm afraid I'm not a huge fan of it. I like the idea, I dislike the execution. I'll see you next time.